Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Legally Insane! I'm your host, Matt Ritter, and with me, as always, is Tony Sam! I said your name today.
I know, that's me.
I just totally monopolizing the intro.
Matt is a lawyer turned comedian. I am a comedian who's still a comedian.
The best part, this comedian, I know what we're about to talk about. I've researched it heavily.
He knows everything, inside and out.
Tony, he doesn't know nothing.
I know, and I am going to learn right along with you, the listener.
What do you want to learn about this week, Tony? Anything that's been on the top of your...
I'd really like to learn about a surprise.
Oh, you're going to learn about surprise law.
Surprise
It's the law of surprises.
What would you consider surprise law?
I would say that surprise law would be like, hey, laws against people throwing surprise parties if you have a heart problem.
Maybe that would be evictions.
You know? Oh, yeah, that would be eviction law?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, surprise, you don't live here anymore.
that's pretty good. Hey, how about this one?
Anything.
Surprise, you're divorced.
That's right. I was just going to say divorce. Wow.
Surprise law. There's a big umbrella of things we can put under surprise law.
It's coming.
You know what we should do? We should make a monument to surprise laws.
I know what you're doing. Monumental law.
Monumental law.
I was going to say monumental law.
Yeah, it's a monumental law about monuments.
Oh, so this is laws pertaining to erecting new monuments.
Oh, you're already going with phallic symbolism here.
Oh, no, this is about monuments? Oh, no. What a specific topic. Why would you pick this?
It's about the sex shop in West Hollywood, the history of phallic symbols in the country. No, it's about the Antiquities Act of 1906. I'm going to try and tie in national monument laws with what is happening in this country right now. I'll see if I can thread that needle today.
That's right. So, depending on when you listen to it, this podcast, currently people are interested in tearing down Confederate monument.
I would say they're more than interested.
They've
shown more than a passing fancy
now,
in the notion.
This is because those monuments are reminders of a terrible time in American history.
Right.
And the people who argue for tearing them down say that we don't need those hateful monuments to remind us of that time in history because we have things called books.
What?
That's right.
What are books?
Well, they're typically
nobody reads anymore, Tony. You need a plaque.
Pages of paper that are bound between heavier pieces of paper.
No. If I don't have a plaque in front of me, no.
You can't learn about history unless there's a plaque on a wall.
Well, you got to be able to do it in under 5 seconds. So if you have a book, if you have a book that will show me the entire history of the world,
you want the Cliff Notes version of history on a wall. In bronze.
It has to be bronze.
It must be bronze.
All right, fine. I'll do history your way.
I demand it.
I'll do it your way. But it's got to be bronze and it's got to be quick.
A bronzed book.
It's got to be the quickest, bronzest book on.
The most bronzest.
Yeah. Show me a book that I can read in 10 seconds in bronze, and I'll happily tear down these statues.
I want a book that's got 432 channels.
But it also
has pretty talking pictures.
But it also better say the white man is better.
Oh, boy.
That's
Well, so cut that out.
Listen, no, that's not what I want, but that is what is underneath some of the filth.
But opponents of tearing the statues down believe that people who want the I guess I would include myself in that, but I would like to see them down.
Yeah, I think I would like to see them down now that I've done research about it, actually.
Their argument is...
To be honest with you, about a couple of weeks ago, I hadn't given it much thought at all because I'm from New York, you're from Chicago. There aren't a lot of Confederate
You would
monuments.
actually be surprised at how many. You'll have the numbers, I'm sure.
I have the list of the monuments.
People believe that it's rewriting history if you eliminate those things. However, I think it's eliminating a sour part of history that no one will soon forget.
Yes. Well, what's interesting, we're going to get into the history of how they popped up because as a lot of people have noticed in the news, they didn't just pop up right after the Civil War. It wasn't just like, oh, the poor grieving, lost side. Let's put up some statues to the
Right.
dead.
I don't believe it was during Reconstruction.
Yeah.
But there were groups known as, I believe, the Sons and Daughters of the
The
Confederacy.
Daughters of the Confederacy I have here, a very interesting group, because what they did, it wasn't just about these statues. It was about perpetuating the lost cause mythology, which is not something a lot of people...
South will rise again.
It wasn't necessarily about the South will rise again.
Oh, I wish I was in Dixie. Hooray, hooray.
It was about the genteel nature of Southern living.
I'm a Southern gentleman, and I do find this current state of affairs despicable.
I found that these Northerners can't just enjoy a mint julep and slavery.
Mint julep and
Just
slavery.
Just a nice, cool
slavery.
Mint I meant julep. I mean julep. Did I say slave? I meant Freudian.
I always
Freudian
feel like
slip.
every impersonation of someone from the South is Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Varying
Listen,
degrees of Foghorn
I hate
Leghorn.
that it is that. But
However,
this lost cause mythology was sort of intended to reinforce, that notion of, their way of life was this, genteel, polite, women had their role and men had their role and black people didn't have any role.
I would just like to say before we get too far into this subject that as two white males, we can only offer our limited perspective on this topic.
Super limited.
Because we haven't had to live with
not only had
the
to live it,
stigma.
I've never even considered these statues until a couple of weeks ago. I find it, in a weird way, I'm fascinated by it. It's
Right.
very disgusting, but I'm fascinated by the fact that the timing of the erection of these erections.
These you call them erections because they're statues of dicks.
They're erections. They are erections.
This is a
They are
part of
symbols.
American history. It is a very ugly part of American history that a lot of us would choose to not think about. But
Right.
a lot of the things that were despicable back then seem to still be happening in America.
But what's interesting is one of the defenses that I've heard, that I sort of can understand is, hey, let's not scrub away history, good or bad. Let's leave it in its proper context. I sort of, at first I was like, okay, I understand, the argument for, hey, there were people on all sides fighting this thing. But then when you find out what's behind these monuments, you go, no, this is monuments to the losing cause that was based on slavery.
That's right.
The summary of it. There's not any more complexity to it. When
That's
you see,
right. General Lee was not a hero.
Yeah, but even
in terms of American history,
Right.
he led army in a rebellion
Yeah.
for a very bad cause.
right, and that's why the lost cause is so dangerous and damaging. The monuments are damaging, and the lost cause mythology is damaging because it's a rewriting of history by the losers.
That's right.
You don't get to do that, even though the winners don't always write it properly too, and they also tend to gloss over their own
That's right.
horrifying.
But as you'll see, I think in a lot of these monuments that the Sons and Daughters of the Confederacy did erect, they have sugar-coated their skewed history and why they went to war. I've seen some of the plaques where they say, "Oh, this war was on behalf of states and their rights to rebel."
Complete revisionist
It's
stuff.
like,
And if you
no. This was about one thing.
Yeah, if you read some of the debate on the floor of of Congress before the war and all that stuff, it was like no, we need to protect slavery. It was
That's
very
right.
clear, and it's in. If you look at the differences between the U.S. Constitution and and the Confederate States Constitution, they're actually almost identical, except for a few key words like slavery.
Right. Did you know that the amount of money annually they made off of slavery was astounding.
Yeah.
It was the number one gross domestic product
of course.
in
Listen,
their terms.
Free labor is
It's the selling of, and I mean, everything around it is gross.
Yeah, but I think what's amazing about what's happening right now is people are all of a sudden getting back into history and going, oh man, maybe I should learn about the Civil War again, because I learned it when I was like 7.
Right.
You know?
I will say.
Remember when you were like 7 and people were teaching you things that are just way beyond
All
your
right,
understanding?
son. George Washington chopped down a cherry tree. Thomas Jefferson, he's a good writer. And Benjamin Franklin is on the $100 bill.
Good. Now run along and never think about these things
Okay.
ever again. And if
Unless you're paying for a stripper. You'll see Benjamin Franklin again.
Oh,
You'll see him again.
you're paying. Oh, you're not paying in singles.
Well, where are you going? To the booby
Everywhere,
trap or
everywhere.
the spearmint rhino?
I'm paying. I'm paying in. Who's on the 50-cent coin?
That's right.
Do you have a change
Put
purse?
in bucket. Put in bucket.
Could I put this in your change purse for you
Put
to
it
shake
in-
your fanny?
Put it in the bucket.
Will you shake your fanny?
Oh, this bucket is so heavy around my neck. Can you put some bills on?
Oh, my
Yeah.
God.
But I wanted to back up because I actually think there's something interesting in that, the first monument laws we ever passed were about national monuments in something called the Antiquities Act of 1906.
So that was the first act signed into law.
by Congress it gave the president broad authority to create national monuments from federal lands to protect significant natural, cultural, or significant features. But what's interesting about it was originally
Nice feature.
yeah, nice. Yeah, those mountains really reminded me of some
Hey, nice peaks.
nice those Tetons. Hey,
Grand Tetons.
oh man, I don't want anyone touching those Tetons.
When we gonna protest to put a bra on them Tetons?
No, I don't want anyone. I don't
Don't
want
cover
any.
them
What
up.
if somebody plants trees and they get all hairy?
You ever hear that phrase, colder than a witch's titty? Well, it's cold up on them Tetons.
But if they put moss on those Tetons,
Hell, gross. Get a national monument tweezers.
oh yeah, that's a job, huh? That's a job.
We gotta.
So, I'm so excited. I'm going to work for the National Park Service. Oh man, what am I going to be doing?
You mean shaving the hair off the Tetons nips?
What? No,
You know,
I can't.
if I
No.
could just see.
I graduated first in my class in environmental studies. I am here to do soil testing and to plant a whole new
Well, now
landscape.
you're gonna test your testicular fortitude and get up on that cherry picker.
Fast forward to 30 years later, his son.
That's right.
Hey, Dad, I just finished first in my class in environmental studies. I'm so excited to join you in the national parks. I heard you do so much amazing work up here.
Well, I did. This is my impression of you. Well, I did until my spear was broken, and now you're gonna shave the hair off the mountain's tits.
Sounds like fun, Dad.
I was like you once.
I mean, it could be exciting.
No.
That was
Hey,
father and son, Teton workers.
Hey, I know we're talking about National Monument this act, but so prior to this act, any monuments.
There were no monuments. There were no national monuments.
Well, statues and things within individual cities, that was erected by the cities.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to get to tie in a bigger picture of what's interesting that I think is happening now. I want to try
an apology.
I want to layer things in here for you. So originally they were worried about just people were bashing Native American ruins. They were just digging up graves, looking for
artifacts.
Yeah, they called them pot hunters.
Oh,
they were
boy.
looking for pots.
So they would just raid Indian burial grounds.
Just marauding their way through Indian burial grounds.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so finally they were like, maybe we should do something about this. Maybe we should also look at, just in general, we've got some beautiful landscapes.
I wonder how many of those grave robbers died because of ghost natives.
You mean the hexes that were put on them?
Yeah.
Oh, completely.
That's sacred ground.
Yeah.
Didn't you see Pet Cemetery?
Listen, and then when that dog comes back at first.
The ground's gone sour. The ground's gone sour.
And then that little kid slit Jason Robards' ankle.
Hey, Daddy, I want to play with you.
Gage, come here.
Daddy.
It's not Gage.
Daddy.
It's not Gage.
I want to play with
you.
Some things, they come back.
Yeah, Stephen King, baby.
Oh, that's one of his best.
Yeah. Oh, so anyway, the national parks. Yeah, that you think that was his best work?
I think it was one of his best.
He had a lot of good work. So the national parks, Teddy Roosevelt proclaimed Devil's Tower Monument, the first one.
Oh, so he was a Satanist.
Teddy Roosevelt, Dark Arts.
It was dedicated on 6/6/1906.
Or September 24th, depending on how you look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, people were debating about whether this was sort of an overreach of presidential powers to start just taking land.
How dare you, Mr. President, you devil-worshipping pagan pig.
And then he went and put a hex on all those congressmen.
Talk soft and carry a big stick and put up big monuments.
All of a sudden, some congressman was like, why are my balls shrinking?
You just got teddied.
You got TR'd, baby.
You got TR'd. TRL live.
TRL.
Hey, that was the first TRL.
First TRL
Teddy
was
Roosevelt live.
his fireside chats, baby.
That's right. The first TRL live was Teddy Roosevelt.
This is Ryan Seacrest here with Teddy Roosevelt.
The president's got a real great address coming at you. He's right after he gets down off this horse naked. That's what he did.
So in 1943 was the first time that it got reduced, the power of national monuments. Jackson Hole, there was a big fiasco. It was a way to...
All the monuments fell in that hole.
Yeah, they all just...
They were all Andrew Jackson monuments. They all fell in the hole.
They all fell into the Tetons.
What?
Yeah, they're right next to the Jackson Hole's right next to the Tetons.
Is
the hole
that
and the
true?
Tetons are right.
Oh, my God.
Do you not know this about the anatomy of there's the Tetons, and then just below that is
that
Jackson's Hole.
Is that why it was called that?
You'd have to think that.
You salty dog.
You'd have to think somebody took a look at those Tetons.
Oh, my gosh. Where's Grant's taint?
It's around the corner from Jackson's
Jackson Hole, Grant's taint.
It's a what's that little?
Where's Lincoln's danger?
What's that little?
Lincoln's dangle. Now you take a left at Lincoln's dangle, just past Grant's taint, straight into Jackson's Hole. Don't dilly-dally around the Tetons. Get right to the hole.
Some people won't let you in Jackson's Hole right away, or ever. Some people.
Foreplay.
Anyway, so 1943, they thought it was a misuse of powers, just trying to add space into Grand Tetons National Park. And then in the 70s, Jimmy Carter used it to expand Alaska, but it really got tempestuous under Obama. A lot of people got all pissy that
he tried to make some monuments before he went out of office.
Yeah, he did a lot of midnight monumenting.
And that was to save the land.
Yeah, to save a lot of land in Hawaii.
Now, when you say monument, you're talking about
Well, so here's where it gets
parks.
Interesting. Well, that's why I was going to say what was interesting about it is it was a bit of a overreach in terms of why originally it was meant to be limited to specifically the area around a monument.
A statue.
Right, or something of, not just a statue, right? It sort of got melded into this natural parks thing. But it was originally meant to mean, hey, you can designate a monument, but it has to be sort of specifically within a given area. And so that's why people were sort of up in arms.
They never made a square footage maximum.
Right. So that's why there was people kind of got up in arms about Obama just kind of granting millions of acres, because it's no longer necessarily connected to the original specific. It said that it was supposed to be, historic landmarks, historic and prehistoric structures, and other objects of historic or scientific interest. But now it's pretty much, hey, broad powers to just kind of designate areas. And a lot of people who argue against that, they go, oh, well, you're kind of destroying our economy if you do that. But what was funny about it is the first people to make that argument were in Wyoming. They were all up in arms. They're like, hey, you're killing our businesses. And now guess what
what business is that, friend?
Yeah, guess what their only business now is in Wyoming, the number one GDP in Wyoming. What area?
Destroying monuments.
No, visiting parks. Visiting parks.
How about that?
How about that?
That and building pipelines.
Yeah. Well, but parks is the highest GDP. So the guy who was like, God damn it,
What else are you going to do with all that beautiful land besides it's either
He wanted to just,
rape it, rape the land.
He was like, we could make a lot of money raping it.
What are the two options here?
Well, we could rape it.
We could rape it, all right, or
we could do that.
We could let tourists come.
Tourists and admire the beauty of it and make lots of money off of that forever. Let's rape it. I want to rape it.
Well, that's 2 votes for raping the land. Do I have any nays?
Wait, hold on. Let me think about this a little more. No naysayers.
No naysayers. And miraculously, though,
Teddy Roosevelt just stepped in and said, sorry,
that's right.
Sorry, you land rapers.
And that's when they were like, not my president.
Not my president.
My president. They would write it on chalkboards, hashtag.
In parks, they would carve into their own national monuments.
That's right.
Not my president! So recently, this happened at Bears Ears National Monument in Utah. Republican lawmakers were fighting against it.
So they can change. If there's been a national monument, it can be undone.
Yeah, well, so that's what's interesting about this broad power, because now Trump is just he's put them all under review. So he's basically just put all.
Now, what does that mean?
He's given it to Interior Secretary Zinke to now look at all of the monuments.
And so they can say
unmonument.
They can demonument.
Demonument. They can roll them back.
Joshua Tree National Park was a monument once.
Yeah. And now it's a national. Yeah. It's been expanded, or it's been changed into a national park.
That's right.
So what I think is interesting about that is that
yes, Matt,
the presidents have the ability to pass these laws to expand monuments all over the country, and that's been going on. While at the same time, on the local level, states have been passing laws to protect their own monuments. So on a federal level, we've been passing laws to protect monuments in a way that seems to be pretty positive.
That's right.
But on the state level, it seems to be pretty insidious.
Insidious.
But it's really only a couple
Chapter
of states.
3, monuments.
South Carolina.
So tell me, how have the states been trying to protect their despicable?
Yeah, and here's what's amazing. It's so recent too. I mean, they obviously saw this coming. I mean, so
they're trying to enact laws to protect Confederate monuments,
but they don't say it that way. So that's what the insidious. It's
all monuments, but with the specific intent.
So Alabama's new law, as of 2017. As in now, Alabama Memorial Preservation Act forbids relocation, removal, alteration, renaming, or disturbance of any architecturally significant building, memorial street, or monument on public property which has been in place for 40 or more years.
Guess
when the Confederate monuments have been in place for over 40 years.
Yeah.
And Mississippi, their law says statues, monuments, memorials, or landmarks from previous wars cannot be removed unless they're being removed to another location or they obstruct drivers' visions. That'd be pretty weird if there's just
they have to be moved to a place where they do obstruct. No.
That was a separate note.
All right, let's just drop it in the middle of the boulevard.
if they're obstructing your view while you're driving, which would be a weird spot for them.
Wait, what monument would be in anyone's way?
I don't know, but
so they're basically saying you can't move it.
No, I think this relates to the fact that there was one monument that got ran over twice. Oddly enough.
What? Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. There was one of the Confederate monuments that got ran over twice, once by a police officer, and he said it was an accident. I was just having a couple beers.
Did he have a body cam on?
No, the body cam never works when you're about to, do something
it malfunctions.
Weird. Yeah.
Right.
I was just out having a couple beers.
Hey, I don't know what happened.
And all of a sudden, I slammed right into General Lee.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Virginia has been ground zero, and Charlottesville's not even ground zero. Ground zero is Richmond. So Richmond, they've got something called Monument Avenue, which it's got a Confederate general.
Yeah. One general, the General Lee.
General Stewart, another general. Okay. Jefferson Davis, okay. Confederate President. Stonewall Jackson, Confederate general. Matthew Fontaine Maury, Confederate naval officer.
You say General Matthew McConaughey?
and then professional tennis player Arthur Ashe.
What?
So from right to left, we got Confederate General, Confederate General, President of the Confederacy, Confederate General, Confederate General, professional tennis player Arthur Ashe, who is not a Confederate general.
Or a white man.
So they they added Arthur Ashe to the avenue, and now they have a Maggie Walker statue coming in too. So they're trying to do a different way of instead of wiping away.
So they have to put an equal number of non-Confederate statues to bring balance to the force?
I'm not exactly sure what the logic behind it. I think it's more that, hey, they couldn't get, they couldn't get a consensus to take down the monuments. So instead, they're putting up other monuments to kind of, hey, here's a progression of history.
Well,
but that's just kind of weird, because imagine if you were like taking your kids to see Arthur Ashe, you're like a young black kid, and you're like, hey, this is great. This is, somebody to look up to, a black person who was very successful.
Well, let's continue our walk.
It's a short tour. I think we should stop the tour now, son. Maybe we should
How
go
far
home.
apart are they all?
It looks like they are all about 2 to 3 blocks away. So but they're all on the same Monument Avenue.
That's right.
So they're all in a straight line.
That's right.
So yeah, that would be kind of a weird.
Well, that's really, if you think about it, it makes sense. After the Confederates lost and the Union was restored, tennis just got very popular.
Tennis was huge.
Tennis was a byproduct of Reconstruction.
So obviously,
that's right.
You gotta have Arthur Ashe.
That's right.
So that's just, it's fascinating that different cities have taken different approaches to this. I mean, I don't know what the competing walking tours are like, when they intersect.
What do you mean?
Just there's probably like a bunch of, Confederate historian walking tour things, welcome to Monument Avenue that ends here. I thought there was another monument at the end of this. Can we go to the end?
Oh, no, you wouldn't like that one. You wouldn't care for that one.
It's real. So now they've actually something good that happened out of this is they have something called Truthful History Heals. Now they have, for each Confederate monument, they've got an example of how context can be added. They've got these prototypes. I don't know that they've actually been put in place, but this was a suggestion that if you're going to keep them there, hey, let's talk about some of the
terrible things
that they did. Although generally they say he was against slavery, he also did some terrible things.
Well,
during that time period.
It's that old phrase, if you stand with the people who believe in a certain thing, then you, by default, stand for that thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. My wife and I were talking about it, and she put it very simply. She said, how would you like it if there were Nazi symbols all over your town? I would want to smash them to pieces, and now, we are getting to a place where they are being smashed. So I do have a little bit of a, hey, I want this to be done in a lawful manner. But then when you see that it's almost impossible to do it in a lawful manner because they're now changing the requirements, like Tennessee, they just passed these things. Tennessee just passed a Heritage Protection Act of 2016 where they changed the requirement needed to remove the monuments. They changed it from a majority to 2/3 of the House.
That seems like, to me, an emergency act done out of desperation
completely
to preserve a terrible history.
That's exactly what you do when you're a baby and when you're a petty child.
That's right.
That's what a petty child does.
Well, now let me ask you, those people that there was a protest group that recently they tore down a monument in North Carolina.
I believe they're called Tear 'em Down, NOLA. That's the name of the organization.
Is that true?
Yeah. They don't have a subtle name. I like that. The
Pretty direct.
I like that the monument people weren't subtle, and now the people who are tearing them down are equally
That's right.
unsubtle.
But a lot of them.
So, hey, what should we call our monument rival?
Well, what's the thing we're doing? I suppose.
Well, maybe we don't want to. Maybe we don't want to, because that way we could kind of.
I don't want to be too on the nose.
Yeah, we don't want to be too on the nosy. So we don't want to call it tear. Yeah, let's just call it tearing.
Tear them down.
Tear them down.
And where are we out of? I guess we live
NOLA.
in
No, tear them down, NOLA. It sounds pretty cool.
So
tear them down, NOLA. So you see all these laws have just gotten passed. I mean,
can I ask you
yes,
something?
Yes.
Those people that tore down the monument, is anyone footing the bill for their arrest?
That I don't know. I mean, this just happened, so I'm not like.
That's
yesterday.
what I would love to hear is that someone does take care of it because they're now they face jail and fines and.
Well, what's interesting in New Orleans is the most controversial one was this Battle of Liberty Place monument because it's the most white supremacist white supremacist. Is that how you say it? White supremacist.
The born supremacy.
It's the most born supremacy. I like saying like sissy because it's like sissy.
Supremacy.
Supremacists.
Supremacy.
It's the most white supremacist. Sissy. It's the most supreme.
White supremacists.
Sissies. So this Battle of Liberty Place, because they have an inscription that they put on it in 1932.
That monument was erected in 1932?
The inscription was added on there to make it clear that it was prejudiced. Democrats McKinney and Penn have been elected governor and lieutenant governor by the white people, were duly installed by this overthrow of carpetbag government, ousting usurpers Kellogg and Lieutenant Governor Antoine, who happened to have been black. So there was a biracial. The governor was white and his lieutenant governor was black. So there was a biracial council at the time. And then when they got voted out.
All right, we'll do it for you.
So when they got voted out, the white guys came in and the first thing they did was inscribe it as, because, this Battle of Liberty Place is for white supremacy.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's what it was. They wanted to make it clear that it was about white supremacy, and David Duke defended it. And it's just had a lot of
that's weird
people wanting to remove it for a long time.
They wanted everyone to know that that's what it was for. Oh,
yeah.
And they were proud of it.
Oh, absolutely.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. And then the mayor called for them to be moved after, a lot of this stuff seeped to the surface after Dylan Roof, the monster white supremacist who shot up the black church in South Carolina. Right. So that's where this sort of stuff kind of came to the surface. What's interesting about that is that happened, right? So the natural reaction to that is reflection on race and, where all these feelings of white supremacy come, and normal people go, oh man, look at there's a lot of overt racism in the South. There's a lot of monuments to it. I didn't even know that, right? Instead, a lot of the legislatures, after Dylan Roof shot up this church and killed 8 people, they were like, oh man, we better write some laws to protect these monuments. We better circle up and make it harder to take down these monuments because, they're probably really going to want to take them down now.
Do you think we need another strong voice like Martin Luther King and I guess we did in our last president, we had a unifying voice, but do we need another African American to stand up and lead the vocal charge on? I
mean, of course you do, but I think you also need white people to, because I think our natural reaction to this stuff is, oh, that's ridiculous. Everybody it's not your roots or whatever, you're not as cognizant of these things.
Well, I have to say, growing up in the part of Chicago I didn't really think about things in terms of a racial connotation. But now living in a very mixed race city where all, everyone lives together, I'm very aware of terrible things that white people
Yeah.
have done, and I want things to.
But what's
change.
interesting is, it's like I'm thinking of these monuments and the laws that are now being passed to stop them from coming down. It's, we don't facing a monument like that it has intent, These monuments have intent. They were all put up in courthouses. They were all put up in very public spaces.
That's right.
And when you see that, you go, oh, of course they should come down. Now, the next question that has now been posed politically is, okay, if now these monuments, then what about, the argument was, well, what about Washington and Thomas Jefferson who owned slaves? And,
well,
where does that fit
here's the thing.
to the whole bigger conversation?
To me, everyone is judged harshly through a magnifying glass
and through history, and
through history.
Hindsight is 2020. Not that like slavery
That's right.
didn't need to be. Everybody knew that it was bad at the time, and a lot of people actually were already abolitionists way back then.
That's right. They were at the time. Jefferson and Washington were fighting for, freedom.
Right.
Now, of course, it appears they only meant for white people, but
although Jefferson predicted that the Union would crack over slavery way back when.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Well,
even
was that while he was raping his 14-year-old slave?
Allegedly. We weren't there.
Right.
We don't know. But no, so the question then becomes, hey, do we now revisit, all of the founding fathers and the monuments to them and all that, when does it end? I say it ends when they have statues of comedians.
The buck starts here.
We should just put up comedians.
I think we should only, from now on, put up statues of Arthur Ashe.
Just tennis.
That guy was a nice
actually,
dude.
He was a good guy.
One of the nicest people.
Yeah. Oh, that would really cause some controversy in some of these cities.
Another.
No, I saw that somebody wanted to put up Missy Elliott instead of Lee in one of these cities, which I found funny.
What?
Yeah. So then it becomes a question of, hey, what is the next, what is the difference? But the difference is that, he fought for a lot of the ideals that are American and, generally at the end of the day fought for the opposite of the American ideal, of what we want our country to be now.
I kind of think statues are archaic anyway.
They're really stupid.
Like, what statue really would you want to see of anyone anyway, besides like your favorite basketball player?
Yeah, I like that one at Staples Center. I like that Magic statue. It's great.
Like all the ones outside of the United Center in Chicago. You got Michael Jordan, who at the time we all thought he was great.
Yeah.
Guess what? He's a jerk.
Yeah, he's a gambler too.
We already got a statue out of him.
Well, that was I saw another argument too. It's like, well, hey, Martin Luther King had many affairs. Like, anybody who you look up to, you can you can tear them down if you want to.
That's not why we built a statue of him. We built a statue of him because he fought for civil rights.
Right. But the question becomes, do we need statues of people?
I don't know. I don't think so.
It's pretty silly.
I don't really.
It's really childish.
They're good for birds to shit on.
The birds need the statue. What would birds do without? That actually should have been the argument they should have made. We need General Lee's statue because birds.
We want someone to all over him till the end of time.
White forever.
Yeah, what? You like white supremacy? Well, you're going to be covered in it.
If you put up a black statue, it's still going to have white birds on it.
Wait, no. Who is saying that?
The Confederate monument supporter.
Oh,
he's defending. He's saying,
I see.
No matter what statue you put there, if it's bronze, it's going to be covered in white. Until the day that pigeons have equality.
We should make statues to pigeons.
That would be.
What about only animal statues?
Animal statues.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like that too.
Just like a giant raccoon eating out of a garbage can, just a statue in the middle of the square.
In Chicago, there's a
food statue.
There's the Michigan Avenue Bridge.
Yeah.
And on that depicts the Battle of Fort Dearborn, where essentially the Union Army and settlers basically wiped out the Native American population.
God, I mean, that's a whole nother.
So,
Like,
I'm just
think
thinking,
about
like,
those people. Think about
most-
what the Native Americans have to look at in terms of monuments.
that's right. Most statues, they commemorate terrible events
They are all-
to somebody.
to somebody. Yeah, there's pretty much not a statue that everybody like. You know, I see a Ronald McDonald statue, and some vegan sees murderer, red-faced,
Or someone who just
murderer.
doesn't like clowns.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah. Murderer! He molested my son! He's a molester! We should not my president!
Not my statue. Hashtag not my statue.
Ronald McDonald is not my... Don't sit on his lap! I
Well-
was molested as a kid! This is not my president!
This was a very hard subject to.
Because there's no right answer.
Well, no, because
Well, is there?
you
The
don't
right
want to
answer,
make
no.
light of this discussion because there's a lot of feelings and there's
Yeah.
a lot of emotions.
Yeah, but you know, the argument of slippery slope, I don't like that one because first of all, you can do case by case. This is all on a local level and every town and community can decide these things, you know, but also, you know, why and when they were erected, context changes with time too.
That's right.
Right? You know, I mean, look, if right now, if we were to put up statues to some of these people 50 years later, maybe we're looking at them in a different light, you know?
My wish is that this podcast becomes our statue.
If there's a statue to the two of us in this podcast center one day, that would be my dream for just pigeons to just.
Podcast center, you mean the side closet?
They don't know what it looks like in here. This is a beautiful, beautiful space. So
the takeaway.
The takeaway is there's been a lot of interesting laws covering monuments from federal law, which was meant originally conceived of as narrow in scope and then drastically expanded. And then on the local level, you've had these Antiquities Monuments Protection Acts, you know, originally potentially to glorify some heroes, but
That's
then
right.
at other times, you know, the groups like the United Daughters of the Confederacy completely took advantage of, you know, white sort of resentment towards civil rights in the black community and openly and overtly put up these, you know, sort of somewhat degrading, you know, phallic symbols of power over the black community, and they should be torn down. And whether or not Washington or Jefferson or Mount Rushmore should exist, you know, listen, we don't need bronze statues, but I don't know that we should go around tearing down every leader of
That's right. Look, I believe it's 9 or it's maybe 12 presidents owned slaves.
Right. You know who I think we should listen to on this matter?
I think I know who you're talking about.
Robert E. Lee.
Junior.
That's right.
His great grandson was a graduate not only of West Point, but someone who said the reason there's no statue of Jefferson Davis or Robert E. Lee in West Point is because both of them were traitors.
Traitor Joes.
Right. To the Union.
No, they're not
And they
part
will
of the
never,
Union.
ever have a statue there.
No. So I think the guys who protecting Robert E. Lee, maybe you should listen to Robert E.
Lee Jr.
Because
Yeah.
because this is probably what he sounds like.
Hi, I'm very educated. I went to school. I don't. What were you gonna?
I'll be the guy. We must protect Lee. We gotta protect Lee. White people, Lee. White.
Hi, I'm Robert E. Lee Jr.
Everybody
Jr.,
quiet down.
Jr.
The white-
I have something to say.
Everybody, hey, everybody, white, the Supremes. Everybody, quiet down. The most supreme white guy is here to tell us what to do. All right, this is exciting, everybody. He's going to tell us. Oh yeah. Oh, I can't wait for what he's about to say. He's about to give us even
You're
more ammo.
all crazy.
What? What?
You're all crazy.
What?
Get out of here. Get off my lawn.
Should we take the tiki
You
torches too?
white scum.
What is happening? Why is
He got so angry. Why did he get so angry? Because he doesn't tolerate ignorance. That's why.
That's right.
He's a good man.
That's right. That's right.
So if Robert E. Lee did something right, it's that he had his great.
He was pretty great.
He's great.
He's
There's an
pretty
extra great just because he's so great.
Yeah, because he's so great. So what he says goes.
That's right. But I don't think we're going around erecting monuments of those people anymore either.
Right. Right. I think now the next statue that we erect has to be of pigeons.
I believe every statue from this point on, giant pigeons.
Yeah, or a food that is offensive to nobody. It's just like
hot dogs.
vegans again. They're going to be like, not my president!
Vegan hot dogs.
Not my president!
How about celery?
Not my statue!
Well, there's no pleasing you.
Not my president! Not my statue! Anyway, so I just thought it was a very
What a
relevant
great
and I think
episode.
it's going to be relevant for a while because this conversation had started happening years ago.
I know.
And
I hope it continues, and
Yeah.
I hope the country, continues to fight for what's right because a lot of these statues, they are terrible and have terrible history.
And also, taking down a statue can heal a community.
That's right. You
You
see
know.
how good those people
Yeah.
felt when they
But don't kick a bronze statue and don't punch it.
I
don't
thought it was.
smash
They were
it.
doing some super slam moves on
Yeah,
it.
they were
I
super
thought that they were
slamming
like
it.
doing leg drops.
They were
and
stupid fraternity moves. Those are.
I
dumb
thought they
fraternity
were
moves.
very
But
nice.
also,
Vince
listen,
McMahon.
I would like
made
to see
some
it done
calls.
legally, but at the same time, if it's clear that a municipality has made that impossible, well, I don't know what else to do.
Well, I'll tell you, today's subject has certainly been legally insane. See ya.